When you have a quadratic equation, you can call it y, you can call it f of x, whatever you want to call it. It has this format: ax squared plus bx plus c. If you graph that, the graph is called parabola. It's either going to look like this or it's going to look like this. It's going to look like a smiley face or it's going to look like a frown face. A smiley face, that's when a is greater than 0. A frown face, that's when a is less than 0. If a is 0, it's not a quadratic. It's going to be a straight line. So it's going to be a smiley face or a frown face. When we solve the quadratic equation, when we said solve by factoring, solve by graphing, what did we look for? Anyone knows what we're looking for? These numbers we found? What were they? What was it? Yes, they were the x-intercept. So when you graph a quadratic equation, if you drew the x and y axes there, and you graph one, I'll do color them here. I'll do 3 of them. Notice if the quadratic equation looks like this, what you found are these 2 points. That's why you got 2 solutions. Or the graph might look something like this. Again, you solved and you got 2 answers, 2 different answers, because that's where the graph intersects the x-axis. When b squared minus 4ac was a 0, you only got 1 answer. Why is it 1 answer? Because the graph looks something like this. Came, touches the line, and went back up there. Or it went like this. So this is when b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0. That's why you have 2 different answers. This is when b squared minus 4ac equals to 0. From the previous video we talked about these. And this one, when b squared minus 4ac is less than, not equal, less than 0. When it's less than 0, that means there's no real solution. They'll never actually cross the x-axis. So the graph might look like this. Or it might look like this. Notice it doesn't cross the x-axis. That's why you have no solution. But we can tell you what the graph looks like by a few points. We know it's a parabola. This point here has a name. Anyone recalls what that name is? Vertex. So this is pointing down, that's pointing upward. Now when it's pointing upward, this point's also a minimum value. Minimum means what? It has the smallest y value. See it on the bottom. What do you think this point is? That's your maximum. That's the largest y value. So that's the vertex is where your minimum maximums are. That's where they're going to be. And we can find where that point is. And your graph is always going to be symmetric, by the way. Once you know what the vertex is, you only have to graph half of it and flip it over. Here's the good news. The vertex is always located where? At x equals negative b over 2a. Always. Every single time. So let's take a problem and go through it and see y equals, I have 2x squared minus 8x plus 6. Can you tell me which way is it going to open? What the graph looks like? Is it going to open upward or is it going to open downward? Upward. Why upward? Opens upward. Smiley face. Why is a smiley face? Because a is equal to 2, which is greater than 0. If a is bigger than 0, it's going to open upward. Just think about money in your pocket. When you got money in your pocket, you're smiling, you're happy. Now, negative money, that means you owe some people money and you see them coming down the street. Now, you're not happy. You get the frown face because like, oh, I owe money. So, A is positive, you got money in your pocket, you're smiling. A is negative, you owe some people money, they're coming after you, you're not happy, you're running now. Frown face. So in this case, that's a smiley face. I can tell you where the vertex is going to be. Vertex, bless you, at x equals negative b over 2a. When x is negative b, let's find what that value. What is b equal to? For this example. Yes, negative 8 divided by 2 times a, which is 2. So I got 8 over 4, Ahmed, which is what? 2. So if I'm going to graph that, I'm going to make a little table here, x versus y. And I'm only going to pick values on one side of that vertex. So since the vertex x here is 2, I'll use the 2, I'll use the 3, and I'll use the 4. That's all I need, couple of points. I don't need 10,000 points. I know it's symmetric. When x is 2, what's 2 squared? 4. 4 times 2, 8, minus, what's 8 times 2? 16 plus 6. Is that a negative 2? When x is 3, 3, let's see, that's 9. 9 times 2 is what? 18 minus 8 times 3, which is 24, plus the 6. Is that a 0? When x is 4, 4 squared is what? 16 times 2, 32, minus 8 times 4, which is what? 32, plus the 6, which is 6. So now I'm going to graph them. Two and negative 2. That's your vertex. 3 and 0. 4 and 6, somewhere up here. Keep in mind, if you take this paper and fold it like this, along this line, if I fold it there, your graph is going to be symmetric. If you fold it along this line, that means, that tells me there's a point here, because when you fold it, that distance should be equal, right? It's going to match that, and there's this value is going to be right there. So my graph should look like this. That's what the graph. This is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. This is your minimum value. It's where's it located at? 2, and what's the value? -2. Let me just re-emphasize this when you're doing this homework assignment. If they ask you, where is the minimum value? Not what, where? What would you write? At x equals to 2. If they said, what is the minimum value? What would you write? -2. So what is the y value? Where is the x value? This line, the green line, that's where your axis of symmetry. I don't think your book talks about it. But that's called the axis of symmetry. The function is symmetric along that line. If you fold it over, you'll have an identical shape. So x equals to 2 here, because that vertex at 2, x equals to 2, is your axis of symmetry. We'll do another 1 or 2, then we're done. Let me try this one. Again, which way is it going to open? Up or down? Downward. Why? Because a equals -1. A is less than 0. So we know opens downward. It's going to have a maximum value. The vertex, the center of the graph, at x equals minus b over 2a. That's going to be -1 divided by 2 times the -1, which is 1/2. Yuck. I got to deal with fractions. Can't help it. Every once in a while you have fractions. We'll pick color points and graph it. X and Y. I'm going to start with that value. That's where that center of the graph, the vertex is. Let me use the 1/2. And I'm not stupid. Just because x is 1/2, that'll be the last time you see me pick fractions. I'll choose the 1, which is bigger than 1/2. I'll choose the 2, which is bigger than the 1/2. So I'll deal with 1/2. I'll pick one fraction. I can live with it. When x is 1/2, when you square it, that's what? 1/4 with the minus sign. Plus 1/2 plus the 6. And if you're going to add these, you need to find a common denominator, which is what? A 4? The 1/2 is 2 over 4. And the 6 is 12. No, 24. Is it 24 over 4? That's what 6 is. (24) and 2 is what? 26 minus 1, that's 25 over 4. So that's the y value. That's a little bit more than 6. 6 1/4, if you do the math. 6.25. When x is 1, what do we have? -1 plus 1 plus 6. That's 6. When x is 2, -4 plus 2 plus 6. Is that a 4? Here we go. I'm going to attempt to graph it. X, this is the 1, this is the 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. X is 1/2, Y is 6 1/4. Right there. X is 1, Y is 6, right next to it. X is 2, Y is 4. Again, flip it over. I should have 1 here. I should have 1 here. So my graph looks like this. Oops. And the question is, okay, where does it intersect the x-axis? I don't know. Where does it intersect the x-axis? These are the x-intercept. How do we find where does the graph intersect the x-axis? That's your maximum value, by the way, the vertex. The maximum at 1/2, and the value itself is 25/4. That's the maximum value. It happens when x is 1/2. The value is 25/4. If you want to find out where does the function intersect the x-axis, what do? Make it equal to 0. So if you take that and make it equal to 0, I don't like x squared to be negative, so I'll multiply everything by -1. And if you factor that, that's what? X minus 3 times x plus 2. When is this going to be 0? When x is 3. When is this going to be 0? -2. Here's my picture. There's the -2. There's the 3. So I wasn't really guessing. I was trying to do it in my head to see where they cross. So my numbers match there. Okay, that's the end of chapter, whatever, 7?